Let's start with the before lecture chant. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Good morning, everyone. We're revisiting the book we've been studying, Standing at the Edge by Roshi Joan Halifax. And you'll remember that she wrote this book to illuminate what she identified as 5 internal interpersonal qualities, or human assets, as she called them, that she believes are absolutely essential for us to live a compassionate and courageous and interconnected life. And we looked at altruism, we looked at empathy and integrity, and today we're going to take a look at respect, her 4th edge state. And just a reminder, which you probably have not forgotten, is all of these assets are called edge states because it's very easy for us to fall off the edge onto the other side in ways that might compromise these very qualities. So today, the 4th edge, respect. You know, a number of times in the book, and in this chapter specifically, Roshi uses anecdotes about the Dalai Lama. And in one instance, she was noting how very low he bows to everyone he is approaching and showing great humility and respect, no matter who is in his presence, whether it's a groundskeeper or a famous head of state. And in fact, she begins this chapter with an anecdote about a neuroscience meeting. I don't know if you're aware, but the Dalai Lama has been very involved in neuroscience, especially as it relates to Buddhism and meditation, and so has Roshi. So he was right in the middle of this very serious and complex scientific discourse that he was giving when he was seated, and he reached out and he took this little card that was nearby, and he just moved it slowly along his forearm, just like this. And then he handed it back to the religious leader, Rinpoche, who was sitting right next to him. And what had happened is during his talk, he'd noticed a very small insect on his forearm. And he had taken great care to gently remove it so that it could be freed. Then His Holiness continued this incredible neuroscience talk. And Roshi remarks that he seems to treat all beings, of course, with just great respect, even the smallest among us. In fact, respect for others is one aspect of respect, the other two being respect for morals and principles and self-respect. And in this way, we can easily see how respect and integrity are actually closely connected. We spoke about integrity last time I was here. We can say that they inter-are, in the words of Thich Nhat Hanh. And our ability to show respect to others really is dependent on our capacity for self-respect. Showing our respect can, of course, be very physical, such as our bows to the Buddha and to each other. And I really have always appreciated this part of Buddhism and Eastern cultures, or Asian cultures in general. And I'm so happy that we still use this in Western Buddhism, this profound simplicity of bowing to each other. And to me, this gesture really fills my body, and I have to say my heart and my mind, sort of by watering these seeds of our common Buddha natures. And even if I meet friends or grocery clerks or neighbors, none of whom are necessarily Buddhists, or actually I wouldn't necessarily know, I can still feel this gesture forming automatically in my body. This bowing, this respect for interconnectedness and our basic goodness, our Buddha nature. And as you probably remember, we have a great bodhisattva for this. And I mentioned him a number of times, Bodhisattva never disparaging. And you know his story. There's a chapter devoted to him in the Lotus Sutra. And we know that, maybe he wasn't all that skillful, but he was sincere in his practice and his heart. Even when he was running up to people saying, I would never disparage you because you are certain to be a Buddha. But he was probably, quite annoying, and sometimes people were mean to him. But he simply responded with respect and patience and generosity. And this is good practice. This affirmation of self and others. This patience and generosity that shows our sense of respect for ourselves, for others, and our world. And we mustn't forget that this great Bodhisattva actually showed respect even to those who might bring him harm. Even to those whose behaviors we might call or find unacceptable or despicable. And it's important for us to keep this aspect of respect for others in mind. We can, in fact, respect those who bring about harm, those toward whom we even feel a strong aversion, those whose actions and behaviors or words have caused untold grief to us or others. We can still respect them. Some of you have spoken of struggles over the last 6 months or so that you've had with people you felt caused great harm, and how to balance those instances. But we can maintain respect even for these people. Roshi says, however, that it requires a willingness to gain insight into the nature of their deeper situation. And her suggestions about this, I think, are very helpful. The example she gives is about a certain past political figure toward whom she had a strong aversion. And she says that she really struggled around this, her own aversion to this man. And how she worked with this is available to us too, at any time. She decided to bring him onto her cushion, to focus on him in her meditation practice. And as she sat, she saw him first as a baby, and then as a young boy. And she also looked at the reality that one day he too will die. And she has the thought that perhaps his death may not be easy, considering the suffering he has caused others. But she continued to focus on him, on the cushion, and eventually realized, in her words, that although I might not want to have dinner with him, he was still a human being. A realization that disparaging him would do no good to either of them, really. And something really profound came to her. She realized that, in fact, if she were called to sit by his bedside as he was dying, she would be there for him. And I think this is a really powerful teaching. Her entire process, to be sure, was powerful. But there is such a fundamental single-pointedness about this last realization, that we are all born vulnerable and likely will die vulnerable. And Roshi ends this anecdote in no uncertain terms, though. She also felt the need to take a stand against the principles that he represented. She admits that she can separate the man from his deeds, and she was able to open her heart to the person while still objecting to his actions towards others. So we have a powerful practice for dealing with our own aversions towards some people by imagining that, as a baby or a dying person. And this gives us a valuable perspective, a perspective that can help us be less reactive, first of all, and also maybe take things less personally. Now, maybe this won't happen for us the first time we try it, or the second or the third. But over time, this might work. And it's like our practice in general. We can put faith in this, that it works, because it has done so throughout history in our lineage. And I'd like to add a few personal thoughts also. Some years ago in Dokusan, my discussion with Mary Allen, I talked about struggles with a friend of mine whose behavior towards others at times was really upsetting to me. It felt like bullying, which is a form of disrespect, of course, falling over the edge. Or at the very least, it felt really hurtful and disrespectful of other people. And at times, I too was a recipient of this. But I was quite torn up about it. And when talking with Mary Allen, I said that being present to this friend and, listening deeply to her and acknowledging her views and her opinions, I really felt as if I was giving up something of myself. And that's what was tearing me apart. Maybe some of my own integrity. And it was actually really difficult and painful to me. So Mary Ellen and I continued to talk a little bit more, and then she said to me this. She said, Patty, acceptance doesn't mean agreement. And I said this aloud, just looking at Mary Ellen. Acceptance doesn't mean agreement. And voila, I felt like a space had opened up in me, a space of relief. A place where I could listen, and a way I could hear and accept this friend's feelings as hers, where she is in her life, how she's going through life, but I could maintain my own integrity and respect for her. And as Roshi said, I was able to open my heart to this person while objecting to her actions towards others. And there is such great freedom in this. And there's a lot of respect. Respect, like the other three edge states we've looked at, also has, of course, its shadow side. We can easily slip over the edge of respect to the other side of disrespect. And Roshi writes that this likely happens as a result of seeing self and other as being separate. This happens when we objectify others and ourselves. And she references this victim, persecutor, rescuer paradigm. And we can think of many examples of our own lives, I'm sure. Certainly it's easy to slip in relationships, but also in the line at the grocery store, in the classroom as an educator, with our business clients, with our neighbors. Whatever the cause, our small mind can latch on and lash out. And this may take the form of bullying or hostility or outright anger, any number of behaviors. But Roshi reminds us that although at times we may feel there are justifiable reasons for our disrespect, disagreements about important things or even not so important things, or maybe we're feeling offended by someone else's actions or words. So although disrespect takes many forms, it is never justifiable. She reminds us that empathy and kindness and insight and compassion are all powerful antidotes to disrespect. And as we know from previous chapters, she provides some practices that support, in this case, respect, that helps us cultivate and build respect and maintain respect. She includes a role-playing model utilizing this persecutor, victim, rescuer paradigm. She also includes a guided meditation that focuses on exchanging self with other. We've done some of that together already. But the third practice that she talks about is the 5 gatekeepers of speech. I mentioned these in the past briefly. I think especially as they related to right speech and the Noble Eightfold Path. But these 5 come from various Buddhist teachings, Buddhist teachings, and are considered important tools for appropriate communication. So to practice them means that we consider them before we even open our mouths. So the 5R, is it true? So we can simply ask ourselves, look deeply at what it is we want to say. Is it true? If not, maybe it's something based on a falsehood or hearsay, then we best not pass it on. So simply checking in, do I know that this is true? Then we can ask ourselves if what we will say is kind. And it's useful, I think, to check in with your feelings at this moment about the person or the persons you're talking to. Do you have certain opinions and judgments already in your mind about this person? If so, I think you can see that our motivation might be rather skewed. It may not be in their best interest. We can remind ourselves, even feeling it in our bodies, to speak out of goodwill and respect. Of course, at times we may find our attitudes are less than kind towards this person, but we feel the necessity to speak up. And we can at least bring awareness to our own bias. And remember that all of us, most of the time, are the same. We're of the nature to suffer, and of the nature to seek happiness. And this can generate our natural tendency toward respect. Another thing we can do is ask ourselves if, in fact, what we want to say is beneficial. And this is more in the vein of maybe changing someone's opinion or someone's behavior. For example, maybe you have a way of doing something that you think really works better. But the risk here is about how much of our ego is in it. Are we seeking something? Are we seeking admiration? Are we building up our own sense of being right? That our way is the right way? Or that we're more capable than they are? So we do very well to bring our attention to our motivations when we're thinking of something as beneficial or not beneficial. And then the last two, is it necessary? Will it serve the person and the situation? Does it have a positive benefit? If not, choose silence. And lastly, is it the right time? Maybe it would be best to speak to this person alone, away from the group, for as an example. The Buddha says, put emphasis on, in his words, we think, the proper time for saying, he calls it. That should always be in our minds, the proper time for saying. Even if the other 4 gatekeepers are all in alignment and we're all set to go, is it the proper time for saying? So these practices cultivate and support our natural tendency toward respect. This attitude of consideration or high regard for others and for our world. And in closing, Roshi states that when we consciously respect another person, a principle, or even ourselves, we experience a natural pause, a turning back to more deeply reflect. And from this perspective, she says, respect is not only a noun, but a verb, a process.